It was supposed to be perfect. Hidden Cedar Farm sat on a hill outside Redwood, Oregon. Whitewashed barn, string lights draped like constellations, lavender-scented air drifting in through open doors. I was 2 breaths away from saying "I do" to Everett Callahan, the gentle, freckled vet who'd stitched up stray dogs and somehow managed to stitch my fractured heart too. Then I saw him. Front row, aisle seat. Sawyer Tennyson. Hazel green eyes that once tracked every jitter in my pulse. The soft scar on his brow I'd traced 100 times. The man who'd loved me hard, left me harder, and occupied every sleepless night since. My voice caught on the vowel. Everett squeezed my fingers, mistaking the stutter for wedding day nerves. But my chest was a thunderstorm, and Sawyer watched, jaw tight, Adam's apple bobbing, wearing a charcoal suit that fit like apology and temptation all at once. Priest cleared his throat. "Elias Trent, do you take Everett?" I forced the words out. "I do." Applause fluttered like nervous birds, but my heartbeat was an earthquake. Sawyer looked away first as if mercy required it. Too late. My pulse belonged to him again, and shame burned brighter than the fairy lights overhead. That's how this began. Please, if your stomach already flipped, hit like, share this twisty tale, and please subscribe so you don't miss the sparks. Tell us where you're watching from, and whether you've ever faced an ex at exactly the wrong moment. Trust me, you'll regret not clicking those buttons when the heat ratchets up. After the ceremony, photos blurred. Guests blurred. Only Sawyer stayed sharp, a living secret at the edge of every frame. When the band shifted into a slow dance set and Everett twirled me under the barn rafters, I finally asked, "Did you invite him?" Everett's smile faltered. "Your mom insisted on sending invites to old friends." I didn't realize. "Are you okay?" I lied. "Just overwhelmed." Because what else do you say when the past you never buried shows up wearing a 4-button vest and heartbreak eyes? Hours later, guests drifted toward bonfires by the orchard. I slipped into the darkened stables, lungs begging for cedar-sweet air. That's where he found me. "Congrats, Eli." His voice was softer than I remembered. Or maybe I was softer now. "Sawyer." My tongue stumbled over the name. We stood between stalls, oil lantern flickering overhead, horses rustling like they knew secrets were about to spill. "You look happy," he said. "You look late," I shot back, bitter and breathless. He flinched, as if every word out of my mouth was a stone he thought he deserved. "I shouldn't have come." "Then why did you?" "Because I needed to see you one more time, before I could let go." I hated the ache that bloomed at that. Hated that my hands itched to touch the scar on his brow, trace familiar paths down a chest I wasn't sure I remembered right. Hated most that my wedding ring suddenly weighed 100 pounds. I stepped closer instead of away. Sawyer's breath hitched and his eyes fell to my mouth. "Eli, please," he whispered, voice fraying. I should have walked. I kissed him. It was foolish, reckless, felt like tearing pages out of a book you swore you'd finished. His lips met mine with a hunger that tasted of guilt and wildfire. My back pressed to the stall door. Hay pricked my palms as his hands slid into my hair. One kiss. Two. Then I shoved him back, breath ragged. "This is wrong." "I know." Hoofbeats thudded nearby, mirroring the panic in my chest. I stared at the man who once taught me every shade of desire, then at the ring gleaming on my finger beneath lantern light. "Leave?" I rasped. Sawyer nodded, lips swollen, eyes shining with everything unsaid. "Goodbye, Elias." He slipped into darkness and the ache left with him, except it didn't. It rooted in my rib cage, pulsing with every heartbeat. I returned to the barn, swallowed the guilt, danced with my husband until our feet ached. But that night, when Everett fell asleep beside me, soft breaths warm on my shoulder, a message lit my phone. "Sawyer, room 14 Redwood Inn. 1 hour. If you want the truth." My thumb hovered over delete. It didn't press. The silence in our honeymoon suite was almost cruel. Everett slept beside me, his hand curled in the sheets like he was still holding mine at the altar. Moonlight stretched across the hotel room floor, cutting long pale lines through the cracked window blinds. And in my hand? That message. Room 14. Redwood Inn. 1 hour. If you want the truth. I stared at it for 32 minutes. Shirtless. Sweating. Heart threatening to bruise my ribs from the inside out. It would have been so easy to stay. To delete it. To lean into Everett's warmth, remind myself why I'd said I do. But sometimes what's easy isn't what's honest. I slipped on jeans, pulled a hoodie over my bare chest, and kissed Everett's forehead before leaving. He didn't stir. Redwood Inn was a 2-story roadside place that smelled like pine needles and cheap coffee. Room 14 was on the far end, yellow light glowing beneath the door. I almost turned back twice. Almost. But when I knocked, it opened like Sawyer had been waiting by the handle. He didn't speak at first. Just stared at me like he was afraid I'd disappear again. Then he stepped aside. "Come in," he said, voice hoarse, barely audible. I walked past him into the room. It smelled like cedar and aftershave. The bedside lamp was on. The sheets were still tucked. He hadn't even sat down. "You waited." I said I would. I turned to him, arms crossed. "So talk." Sawyer nodded, running a hand through his hair. "You deserve more than a text and a hotel room. You had 2 years." "I know." My voice shook. "You left me, Sawyer. You disappeared. No call. No closure. Just gone." His jaw tensed, the veins in his neck standing out. "My father had a stroke. I flew to Atlanta the same night. I planned to call. But it spiraled. The hospital. The family business. I got stuck in something that wasn't mine, and by the time I surfaced I figured." He looked away. "You'd moved on." I blinked. "So you let me think you didn't care?" "No," he whispered. "I let you think I didn't exist. Because the thought of you hurting because of me was worse than hurting alone." My throat closed. "That's not love, Sawyer. That's cowardice." He stepped forward. "And yet I'm still here. Watching you marry someone else because I couldn't fix it in time." I wanted to slap him. I wanted to kiss him again. I did neither. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my ring. Held it in my palm. Stared at it. "Why'd you come today?" I asked. He hesitated. Then so quietly it broke me. "Because I never stopped being in love with you." The room spun. I sat on the edge of the bed. He knelt in front of me. Eyes shimmering. Hands trembling. "I didn't come to ruin your life, Eli," he said. "I came to tell you the truth so you wouldn't spend your life wondering if we ever could have had more." "And now what?" I whispered. He took a shaky breath. "Now, I ask if I can touch you one more time." I shouldn't have said yes. But I did. Because the truth wasn't a word. It wasn't a vow. It wasn't an apology. It was the way my body responded to him even now. When he leaned in, I met him halfway. And this time the kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't born of panic. It was 1,000 "I'm sorry" wrapped in silence. He kissed me like we had all night. Like the years apart had only made the craving grow sharper, deeper. He stood, pulled me up with him, then peeled my hoodie off like he'd done it 100 times in his sleep. My skin burned everywhere his hands touched. He kissed my jaw, my throat, my shoulder. "I dreamed of this," he whispered, mouth hot against my collarbone. And when he pushed me gently onto the bed, undressed me thread by thread, there was no doubt. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't cheating. This was unfinished love, begging for one last chapter. He undressed me like it hurt to do it slow. Each button, each pull of fabric was deliberate. Not rushed, reverent. My hoodie fell to the floor. Then my jeans. Then finally I was standing in front of him in nothing but my briefs, navy blue and tighter now, straining with everything I wasn't saying out loud. Sawyer stood close enough to touch, but he didn't. He just looked at me. "God," he whispered. "You're still?" "Still what?" He stepped closer. His fingers grazed my hips, slid beneath the band. "Mine." My breath caught. I wanted to protest. Wanted to say I belonged to someone else now. That there was a ring back in my pocket that meant something. But when his lips brushed the edge of my throat, I melted. Every memory, every kiss, every night we fell asleep back to back after fighting, and every morning we woke up tangled anyway, it all came flooding back in his touch. And it burned. He kissed my chest like it was an apology. Bit gently at my shoulder like he was claiming it all over again. His hands were firm, sure, and when he pushed me back onto the mattress, I went willingly, eager, breathless, already aching. "I'm not here to ruin you," he said softly, kneeling between my legs. "I just want to remember what it was like to love you with my whole body." I didn't answer with words. I reached for him instead. He stripped down in front of me, shirt first, then belt, then pants. His body was harder than I remembered. Older. Tighter. The kind of body that carried pain and desire in equal measure. He crawled up over me slowly, letting every inch of skin touch. We groaned in unison when our hips pressed. My hands slid up his back, nails digging into muscle, dragging him closer. He moaned into my neck. "You still make that sound?" I whispered. "So do you." I kissed him again, tongue slow and hot, teeth scraping his bottom lip. And when he slid his hand between us, palming me through my briefs, I almost came undone. "You're hard," he muttered like he didn't quite believe it. "You're late," I groaned, grinding up against him. "But not too late." He pushed the briefs down with both hands, eyes never leaving mine. Then he kissed his way lower, mouth brushing my navel, then down lower still until I gasped, hands in his hair, hips lifting. The rhythm he found was too familiar, too perfect. He knew every button to push, every spot to linger. My back arched, and I whispered his name like a prayer I hadn't said in years. When I came, it was all at once, hot, violent, full-bodied. I shook with it. He held me through it. Then he came up, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, kissed me on the cheek. "I've wanted that since the second I saw you at the altar." My throat was tight. "You're evil," he smirked. "You said you wanted the truth." After a moment, we lay side by side, naked, fingers just barely touching. The room was thick with heat, sweat, and questions we didn't know how to ask. "Tell me something," I said, staring at the water stain on the ceiling. "Anything. If I had called you back then, after you disappeared, would you have answered?" He was silent. Then, "Not at first. I was scared. But if I'd heard your voice," he turned to me, "I would have dropped everything." I nodded slowly. He reached for me again, eyes softer now. "Do you regret this?" "I regret needing it this much." He leaned in. "And now?" I pulled him into me. "Now I just want to feel you again." And I did. This time slower. This time face to face. This time with hands held and whispers passed between kisses. When he was inside me, it didn't feel like cheating. It felt like coming home. The room was quiet except for the sound of Sawyer's breathing. He was asleep beside me, bare-chested, one arm thrown lazily over my stomach like it belonged there. His skin was warm against mine, his hair still damp with sweat. And I didn't move. I just watched the sunrise paint his back in soft gold. But as the sun crept higher, so did the weight in my chest. Because I wasn't his anymore. Because there was a man waking up alone in another hotel suite, wearing a ring I'd just taken off last night. And even though I hadn't said it out loud, my body had already confessed. I'd betrayed Everett. And Sawyer? He was the lie I still craved. He stirred around 6:30, blinked against the light, and found me watching him. "You didn't sleep?" I did. A little. His brow creased. "You okay?" I nodded, then shook my head. "I don't know." Sawyer sat up slowly, drawing the sheet across his lap. "Talk to me." "I left my husband in bed to come here." "You left your wedding." I winced. He sighed. "Sorry? That wasn't fair." "No. It was honest." We sat in silence for a moment, the sheets tangled between us. I looked down at my hands, still smelling faintly of him. "I didn't plan this," I whispered. "I know. But I also didn't stop it." He reached out, touched my wrist. "What do you feel right now?" "Not guilt. Not fear. Just me." I looked up, met his eyes. "Safe." He swallowed. "And with him?" "Stable." Pause. Then, "But not safe." I didn't answer. Because the truth had been written in my kiss last night, in the way I clung to him, in the way I still hadn't put my ring back on. I showered while he made coffee. We didn't speak while I dressed. When I emerged, fully clothed and trying not to break, Sawyer handed me a mug and said softly, "I won't ask you to stay." I blinked. "You won't?" "No. You already stayed once. I'm not going to beg for another night. But I want you to know something." I waited. He stepped closer, took the ring from my palm, held it up between us. "You don't have to wear this if it's weighing you down. And you don't have to come back to me either. But whatever you do, just make sure it's true. Don't go living a lie just because it feels easier." My throat closed up. "I was yours," I whispered. "You broke me." "I know," he said, voice low. "But I also know how to hold you better now." We didn't kiss again. We didn't fall back into bed. We stood by the door while I wrapped my scarf tighter around my throat and tried to pretend I didn't still want him. "Do you still love me?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. "Every single goddamn day." I nodded, then walked out. The drive back was quiet. Fog hung low over the hills, the kind that made everything feel suspended, like the whole world was holding its breath. When I entered our suite, Everett was awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, barefoot, eyes red-rimmed. "Where were you?" he asked softly. I couldn't lie. Not anymore. "I saw Sawyer last night." He didn't speak. "I kissed him," I continued. We slept together." A sharp breath escaped him. His shoulders buckled. I stepped forward. "Everett. Don't." He stood, moved away. "I didn't go looking for it. But you didn't stop it." I closed my eyes. "I was trying to make peace with my past. And you broke your present." His voice was so calm it cut. I reached for him, but he stepped back. "I can't do this, Elias," he said. "Not because you slipped, but because you never really let me in. I was trying to love someone who still belonged to someone else." Tears hit my cheeks before I knew they'd formed. I wanted this to work. I know. So did I. I left that afternoon. I didn't go back to Sawyer right away. I didn't run into anyone's arms. I just sat on a bench outside the inn, the ring in my pocket, the wind cold against my skin. And when my phone buzzed, one new message, I didn't have to read the name. "Sawyer, whatever choice you make, let it be yours. And if you ever want to come home, I'll leave the door unlocked." The message sat on my screen for days. "Whatever choice you make, let it be yours. And if you ever want to come home, I'll leave the door unlocked." I read it in the shower. At red lights. In bed, where Everett's imprint on the mattress still lingered. He didn't call again. Neither did Sawyer. Because the next move was mine. And for once in my life, I didn't want to move out of guilt or panic or what would make other people proud of me. I wanted to move toward truth. I went back to the barn where we said our vows. It was empty now. Still smelled like eucalyptus and old dreams. I walked to the spot where I first saw Sawyer's face through the crowd, so sudden, so piercing, and stood there with my hands in my pockets. I whispered, "What do I want?" The silence answered. Then I drove. 1 hour out of Redwood. A turnoff road I remembered from Sawyer's texts. A dirt path through pine and rain. The sun was setting when I pulled up to his cabin. The porch light was on. He hadn't lied. The door was unlocked. He was sitting on the floor, bare feet, hoodie, journal on his lap. When he looked up and saw me, he didn't speak. Didn't jump. Just watched, waiting to see what I'd do. I stepped inside, shut the door behind me, and whispered. I left him. His expression didn't change. "I didn't come here for comfort," I said. "Or sex. Or closure." He stood slowly. "Why did you come?" I crossed the room one breath at a time. "To say that I still love you." His eyes finally broke. "What? Honest? And I want to try again. If you'll have me. If we can do it right this time." He closed the journal. Walked to me. "You broke my heart. You broke mine first." He nodded. "So we rebuild from the cracks? If you're willing." Pause. Then he touched my face. I never stopped being willing. The kiss this time wasn't desperate. It was quiet, gentle. The kind of kiss people whisper about in coffee shops and write novels around. When he pulled my hoodie off and I tugged his shirt over his head, it wasn't about need, it was about want. Naked, we didn't tumble into bed. We walked, hand in hand. The sheets were cool against our skin, the fire from the living room barely reaching the bedroom. He laid me down, forehead pressed to mine. "This isn't about forgetting the past," he said. "It's about forgiving it." "Then forgive me slower," I whispered. And he did. Every touch that followed was patient. My hands roamed his body like they had every time before, but now with reverence. His mouth traced my chest, my stomach, stopping to breathe me in. I rolled over him, straddling his hips, and when our bodies met again, it was like a prayer answered in moans. We didn't rush. We didn't speak. We moved in sync, like muscle memory and new desire had joined forces. I sank onto him, eyes locked, lips parted, his hands gripping my waist like he never wanted to let go again. We rocked. Together. Our sighs were soft at first, then louder. He whispered my name, again and again, until it broke into a gasp as we came together. Shuddering. Sated. Safe. After we lay tangled. Sheets kicked down. Hands still exploring. Breath still ragged. And I finally said it out loud. "I wore the ring because it fit. But you're the one who felt right." Sawyer pulled me into his chest. "Then stay. No rings. No timelines. Just stay. I didn't hesitate this time because I know I'm already home.